evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink. 89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture, joined as always by my co-host and general manager extraordinaire, Mark. Say hello, my friend.
Hello.
And as you guys have been hearing, we are revving the engine for the 2025 Mahoning Road Show, which takes our preservation efforts, love of 35 millimeter, love of all things drive-in, on the road to other 35 millimeter indoor establishments, and spreading that love. And we are so excited to get this thing rolling. We've been doing some interviews with our partners, our partner theaters, as we hit the road. And today we are so excited because we are joined by Ian Judge, creative director at the Somerville Theater. And for those of you guys that do not know the historic story of the Somerville, you're about to hear it. But we are teaming up on March 1st for not 2 movies, 3 movies: Shockwaves, FUNHOUSE, ALLIGATOR, all on 35 mil. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, so excited to have you. I gotta say, we did the soft launch of the road show last year, and we were lucky enough to do a show with you, one of our very few shows last year, and it was one of the highlights of the entire year for us. It was just such a beautiful venue, so well received. You guys are amazing. So thank you for bringing us into your fold as well.
Oh, the feeling is mutual, and I'm really heartened to hear that you guys had such a good experience. It makes it all worthwhile.
And for me, I mean, I'm, as somebody who's been a fan of the Somerville since the 90s, to be able to be putting on a show in a theater where I saw so many shows was just like it's just like mind-blowing, really.
Yeah, that I think was my favorite part, was being behind the curtain. And Mark, you know, you were just so excited and telling me, you know, I saw this band here, I saw this show here, and I'm about to walk out on that stage. It's just so fun.
I mean, there are days when I feel that way too. There are days when I'm like, I got to do X, Y, and Z. I got to clean this. I got to fix that. I got to program this. Right. But there are other days when you do take a breath and take a step back and be like, oh, yeah, I'm part of a pretty amazing tradition here. So it's pretty awesome.
It is incredible. Well, let's start there with the tradition. Before we get into your specific involvement with the theater, can you give us a little history of the Somerville?
Sure. So Somerville Theater is 111 years old this year, and it was built for vaudeville and silent movies, right? Back in the days when that was pretty much a balanced program for a lot of the bigger neighborhood theaters. Although it really wasn't a neighborhood theater per se, it was kind of a destination area in the teens and 20s, Davis Square in Somerville. And Somerville is and was the most densely populated city in New England. More people per square mile, and at one point had 12 movie houses, but we were always the classiest. And so, yeah, right, for whatever that's worth. So, you know, back in the teens and 20s, it was vaudeville, it was movies. Then they had a stock player company that would supplement those programs as well. And up until the Roaring 20s came to a crashing halt everywhere, it was really a nightlife destination. And so the Somerville Players were the in-house stock company, and like Tallulah Bankhead got her start there. And I believe somewhere online you can find a letter that she wrote to her grandfather that said something to the effect of, "Grandpappy, I can't take the schedule here. I got to leave, you know, too much." And we had some, you know, Ray Bolger danced on the stage when he was in vaudeville, and Francis X. Bushman appeared in a play there when he was kind of maybe on the tail end of his career, right? Yeah. And so that all kind of switched once the Depression hit. They got rid of the live stuff other than, you know, the occasional variety night type of show. And it became really a working class neighborhood movie house. And it was that throughout the prime years of like the golden age of Hollywood, you know, double feature, change twice a week. They did all the gimmicks like giving away plates, giving away fur coats. The people that owned it for the most of its history was a family called Viano family, and they loved those gimmicks. And in fact, one of our sister theaters, that the building is still there but is no longer a cinema, was the Broadway Cinema in East Somerville. And they have put an ad in the paper that said to be given away from the stage of the Broadway Theater, a baby. Right? And you didn't find out no, until you showed up that week. It was a baby pig, right? So, but that was like a great prize in the 20s, you know, bringing home the bacon from the movie house, you know. So then, you know, Somerville became a little bit more, like, it was always very blue collar, a little bit more downtrodden. Slummerville was a pretty common thing to say about it when I grew up there in the 70s and 80s, right? But what happened was it went to second run status as the chain theaters moved into the area. And then a guy named Garen Daly, who has been running the Boston Sci-Fi Film Marathon and Film Festival for years, he took a lease on the place in 1982, and he turned it into a rep house. So double features, triple features, 2-3 different programs a day, local premieres, and he also brought concerts to the stage, really for the first time regularly in modern history. And so Garen ran the theater up until 1990, and the family that had purchased the building in the 80s took over then, and they continued that program briefly with repertory, but as repertory became a bit of a challenge for a lot of theaters in the 90s, they dropped that, went back to second run, and they decided in the mid-90s to expand the theater. So the rest of the building had been mostly kind of abandoned. There was a defunct ballroom on the second floor and a defunct bowling alley and billiards hall in the basement. And they gutted all of that and built 4 more cinemas. So it became a multiplex, but it was still second run, you know? So that's when I got hired. I got hired in 2002, which was kind of like awesome. You know, I grew up down the street, and here I am walking into this beautiful place, but there was so much work to be done. Like the projection quality was terrible. The building needed a lot of TLC, but eventually we turned it around. We pushed into first run movies, which is great because second run really doesn't exist, certainly not in cities anymore. And I also started programming some fun stuff, right? Midnight shows, as many repertory screens as I could sneak under the wire. And eventually, I became doing all the programming myself, and so we do a lot more of that stuff. We upgraded the booth to 70 millimeter and to 35 millimeter archival, so we can get a lot of different prints that other places can't get. And then really one of my behind the scenes partners in crime is our head projectionist, David Kornfeld, who is legendary both for his ability and his craft, but also for his notorious crankiness.
We love
I was going to say his fashion sense, because damn it, he must be the best dressed projectionist I've ever seen.
Very classy.
He is definitely a clothes horse, and he didn't always dress that way. I worked with David when I was a teenager at the Harvard Square Theater, and he was a projectionist there, and he didn't dress that way. If you ask him, he'll tell you it's just he decided at one point in his life, this is the way I wanted to dress always, and nothing's going to stop me now. And so, you know, bless him. But he is the best dressed man in show business, right? But David really enabled us to do things to get us on exclusive lists of access to prints that we might not have access to otherwise. I mean, archives and the Academy and the Library of Congress and things like that. So he also is just fanatical about presentation and quality, and
the passion is just it's so clear. And on a programming level, you know, like we were looking at, I think you had maybe 1 month's calendar out there in the lobby, and my brain was splitting in two. I'm just like, the amount of incredible programming throughout 1 month was just amazing. And I mean, I know you guys are, you know, power in numbers being in a city versus what we do, but it was just inspiring. So
I would say you guys are equally inspiring to us, right? Because you guys are not in a city, but you have the most incredible loyal following. People drive from all over. I mean, Mark, that's how you got involved, right? I mean,
yeah,
that is remarkable. Like, I'm lucky. We're in Boston, is a great film city. Like, we have so many amazing film places, the Coolidge, the Brattle, the Harvard Film Archive, and we're just one of them, you know. And you guys, you are it, man. You're like a regional draw. That's amazing.
No, that means the world. It really does. And I love the fact that, you know, you truly have leaned into the history. And do you guys still do concerts on the regular there?
Oh yeah, in fact, concerts are probably on the upswing now, particularly over the last couple of years with kind of the Hollywood stuff thinning out a little bit. You know, repertory is repertory, and we'll always have lots of places for that. And we have tried to increase that over the last few years. But with there being slightly less first-run movies than there used to be, that leaves room for more concerts. So yeah, we will probably end up having around 50 live events this year.
Amazing.
Plus, in December, we host the Slutcracker, which is a burlesque nutcracker, and that is in its 17th year. It just wrapped up. And
That's magic.
yeah, they do about 18, 19, 20 shows a year. This year, they did 14,000 people.
Wow.
That has become a big tradition for them and for us. And yeah, it's just one of the fun things that people
So
associate
that
with.
is so. I think I just found some reason to come back.
Oh, you guys got to come up for that. Come to
Oh,
Boston, see the
happy
Slutcracker.
I
holiday.
always wanted to, and one time through your good graces, I have to break the news to everybody that Ian and I go way back. So this is not our first rodeo here. There was a time where I had asked you about getting tickets to a certain show, and to be clear, between you and I and everybody listening, I've never asked about free tickets, but you've always just given them to me. I was just saying, what's the best way to get good tickets for this show? And you're like, I got you covered. And we get these like amazing exclusive box seats that the public can't have access to for it might have been a Mike Nesmith show or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And somebody else who was seated there was one of the performers from the Slutcracker. And I don't remember if she introduced herself as a slut or not, but that's my memory of it is basically she's like, oh yeah, one of the sluts in the Slutcracker. And we were just like,
Oh,
oh yeah,
yeah.
that's great. I've always wanted to go. And I used to live, an hour and a half from Somerville. Now I'm like 4 hours from Somerville, unfortunately, but it is one of these iconic Boston things that I always felt like I was missing out on by not being a part of. So one day I will have to witness the majestic holiday slut action.
Guys, bring the whole staff up, man. We'll treat you right.
Yeah,
And,
come
and trust
on.
me, the term slut is a term of affection and honor.
Oh yeah.
They say they're one of the sluts. They definitely, it's very body positive. It's very like,
Wear it with pride, baby.
yeah, exactly. So, 100%. It's not. I like to say it's not old man burlesque. It's empowerment burlesque. It's like
Fair
all
game.
different colors and genders and people and everything.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, let's jump in the time machine and go back to 2002. Where were you in your life that got you involved in the Somerville?
Well, so I went to Keene State, which is where I know Mark from, right? And I had a film degree. And when you graduate with a film degree, people are like, "Oh, you're gonna move to New York or LA and like fetch coffee for assholes and try and make it," And I just wasn't into that. And
You're like,
throughout,
I want to fetch coffee for assholes in Boston.
that's right. Goddammit. I want to sweep up their popcorn. But well, all through college, I worked at the Harvard Square Theater. It was your Lowe's Theater at the time. It's closed now, sadly. But and so when I graduated, I was like, well, I'll just become a theater manager for a while, right, and figure out what I want to do with my life. And I did that, and I quit, and I got a desk job at a healthcare company, and it was the only job I've ever been fired from because it was very office space. Like I don't know what I was supposed to be doing, but I didn't do anything, and it was not a shock when I got fired because I just didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. But I went back to Lowe's and I helped open the Boston Common Theater, which is an AMC now, right downtown. And that place was a nightmare to open. It was just so poorly designed, and they weren't done building the skyscraper above it, and the fire alarm was always going
I was
off.
just going to say the endless stories of screenings, and I'm one of them, screenings being interrupted by the fire alarm going off.
Those strobes would go off and I'd have a panic attack. And that's why I quit because I was like, I'm going to die from this stupid
I
job.
can't
Like,
take it.
and yeah, exactly. And so I did. I quit and I did a bunch of temp jobs. And I was actually thinking about moving to California, maybe gain my residency, go to grad school, something like that. And of all things, my mother said, hey, in the paper, because that's how long ago this was when jobs were advertised in the paper, said they're advertising the general manager at the Somerville Theater. You always loved that place. You should apply. You could totally do it, right? And I was like, I don't know if I want to work at movie theaters again, really. And I was like, what the hell, right? So I applied and I got it. And yeah, the rest is history.
That's incredible. I just love that my whole thing is I discovered the Mahoning Drive-In Theater as a drive-in fan. I was so disappointed that I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But the idea of keeping this local love that you have going. You truly are the perfect person for the job because it's your area, you know?
That's true. That's true. I mean, I definitely appreciate the community I'm part of, even though it's changed, and you got to change with it a little bit. But absolutely.
Yeah. Well, in your run, are there any kind of choice memories or shows that stand out where you're like, pinch me, I can't believe we are doing this?
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say from a film standpoint, probably my one of my proudest moments is that we were the number one New England gross for the Hateful Eight, which we had the 70 millimeter Ultra Panavision Roadshow of, and
Yes.
it was bonkers in the best sense, right? We just did so much business. It was exactly the wheelhouse of our audience, and it was great to hit that number and to have that many people come through the door and see it and enjoy it. So that was a film highlight. I mean, I have a lot of them. Just the fact that we reinstalled 70 millimeter there. The first thing we showed in 70 was a blow up print of the Wild Bunch. And the best compliment I think I could get if you're from the Boston area is this older gentleman came up to me afterwards and said, "Thank you. This was great. It reminds me of what the Coolidge Corner Theater was like in the old days." And it's not to cast a shade on them currently, but they're a big nonprofit now, and they have this huge expansion and they have a lot of resources. And I think what he meant was that kind of like, hey, we're all in it together to watch this amazing film in this format, and it was just a good audience, because audiences really make the difference. So that's like, those are some film highlights. Live shows, I mean, we had Springsteen play there, we had U2 play there, and those are both
Come
insane
on.
things that like you can't really top U2 playing in a 900 seat theater. You really can't top that. It was madness. And I'll tell you the funniest thing about that for me personally was, obviously everybody and their mother's calling you to say, can you get me tickets? Can you get me in? Can you get me that?
Yeah.
And literally, I would say like 75% of the people who worked for the city of Somerville at the time definitely found a quote unquote legitimate reason to walk through the door that night. And the only time in my life I've ever got a boot on my car was because I had an unpaid extra fee for a parking ticket that I didn't realize I had. And the next morning came out of my apartment and I had a boot on my car from the city of Somerville. And I was like, it was so ridiculous that I laughed, because it cost me $200 to get it off my car or whatever. But it was just like, I just got every one of you mofos into the most exclusive concert on the planet.
And you boot me?
You boot me, But yeah, so those are like pretty amazing. I would say like shows that I've seen, like I know Mark went to, I think, a couple of Mike Nesmith shows. Those were great. Yeah. For me, Colin Hay was one of the highlights. Colin Hay, if you ever get a chance to see him, he puts on such a show. He's a storyteller, and he'll stand in line. He will meet anybody after the show who wants to stand and wait and talk to him. And so that's a highlight. We had Adele play there just before she went huge, and that's when she was still doing her like Etta James, real bluesy stuff. So that was cool. So yeah, a lot of really amazing memories. I'm sure there's more, but like I've been there 23 years and it all kind of blends together,
Yeah, well, I can see why you didn't go anywhere. I mean, it is just like this dream come true position with the amount of things that you guys do and different mediums that you guys kind of have your fingers in. It really is this ultimate kind of fan space.
It's like what you guys are doing a very specific thing that is not found, right? And I think in our own way we're doing that too, because we have this weird combination of things that no other place is exactly doing.
Yeah,
it lends itself to legendary status almost,
Absolutely. Did you find when you came in that you had to work to kind of rebuild a community there, or because of the history of it, because of the location, all of that, was it kind of an existing built-in thing?
No, it was very much, especially from the film side,
Yeah.
needed to be rebuilt, right? I mean, we still struggle with people who went here 25, 30 years ago and said, oh, it's just a dumpy dollar house.
Yeah, that memory of it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And once you lose a customer, it's hard to get them back. It's the truth. And even in Boston, we play a movie in 70 millimeter and the Coolidge is playing it at the same time. The Boston Globe will mention the Coolidge and not us, and it's like, or they'll mention Kendall Square and not us, or whatever it is. And it's like, guys, there was a time when those theaters didn't exist or were dumpy dollar houses too. And like, what do we have to do here to get some legitimacy, you know? But I understand it. You know, we're the last to the scene in some ways, except that in other ways we were doing it before all those places. We were doing it in 1982. You know, so you know, I'm very much aware that we came from more humble, not to say beginnings, but when I started, it was a humble beginning. The place, I mean, the movies weren't in focus. The place was a dump. So it's been a rebuilding of that and building that community into it. But I think we've hit it. You know, I mean, it's in the last 10 years for sure. I mean, obviously COVID was a bump in the road we'd all like to forget about, but and it totally throws my sense of time off, but
yeah.
But I think that was the biggest thing. I think the live events, you know, those have kind of always kept rolling. But you know, I think that improving the facility when people come to see a show there and they see it's nice and it's not a dump. And you know, when I first started working there, we had a lot of these kind of grungy jam bands that might have been great music, but they beat the shit out of the place. And we don't have that anymore. You know, we have, not that we don't have the occasional crazy rock show, but it's very much a nicer establishment.
Well, we are the Drive-In Podcast. I'm curious, just in general, with the area where you grew up, do you have those drive-in memories as a kid? Did you have any experience with that?
Sure. So most of the drive-ins around us were gone by the time I was like toddler size, you know, like 5 or 6. I mean, there was Meadow Glen and the Medford Twin were the two closest to my house, and the Fresh Pond. But I don't remember the Fresh Pond one. I just know it was there. And I remember the Revere Drive-In on Route 1, which became the Revere Showcase, and is now sadly gone and is like an Amazon facility. So I remember them being there, but I don't remember going to them. The first memories I have of going to drive-ins were really when we were on vacation. If we were up in New Hampshire or Maine, there's a lot of them up there. Even now, there's more there than certainly Massachusetts, but those were my memories. And I would say like my favorite drive-in memory as a child or kid was we went to I think it was the Weirs Beach Twin Drive-In on vacation. It was two families. We were all vacationing together. And the one screen was Sister Act and the other screen was Universal Soldier. And we, of course, family, they bought tickets to Sister Act, but my buddy and I like sat on the roof facing the other direction. So we watched Universal Soldier, but we had to listen to Sister Act.
That's perfect.
I like to say, Dolph Lundgren has a lovely singing voice.
It is amazing when it hits you as a kid. It's like those core memories that burn into your soul, which is the same situation with a good indoor experience as well. It just informs who you are as a movie fan, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, it being a city kid, it was such a treat to go to a drive-in. It was such a treat. Like, it was wild. And I mean, the screens are freaking huge. That's what you don't realize when you think about it. Like, it's so much bigger. And then when you're a kid, everything's bigger, right? But even as an adult, it's so much bigger, you know? So it's great. I mean, there's a closed drive-in out near Worcester, the Leicester Try, and I wish if I had more resources, I would totally make a proposal to them like that. You know,
heck yeah.
You know,
yeah, it's those things that, you know, the norm of having kind of your neighborhood indoor theater or your neighborhood drive-in, it's just becoming fewer and far between. That we just feel so lucky that we're able to be on this preservation effort now to shine a light on as many drive-ins that have been able to survive, you know?
Well, and that's it. And you guys have done it yourself by really, your drive-in is a personality. It's an entity, right? It's something that's very specific, that's very different than most of the drive-ins that remain. And I personally think that is the future of cinemas, right? Of any kind of cinema, whether it's hard top or no top. I think that there's going to be less cinemas, right? The chains are closing a lot of locations, distribution has changed, but I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's such a special experience, such a communal experience, but your communal experience as a drive-in is different than a hardtop experience. And then beyond that, the actual community that pops up around your place, around my place, those are very unique, but they're very special. Those are those things that you cannot recreate out of nothing. You can't create them corporately. It's way different than going to an AMC. It's just, that is that kind of special thing that needs to be embraced, but thankfully so far is being embraced. And maybe there's fewer than they used to be, but they're the ones that are there that are doing it right. They're going to be in a much better position than the 10 plexes and malls everywhere, because they're part of their community.
Yeah. And that's really what it's about is, having that community that you can rely on, where you can go and be yourself. It's a very sterile situation when people think about going to the quote unquote movies, and then they go to a place like Somerville or the Mahoning and they see, oh, this is the experience of seeing movies,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I sometimes say when I introduce a movie at work, right, is that tonight, this is a particular village, a moment in time for the next 2 hours or 4 hours, whatever it is, that will never exist exactly like this again. This mix of people, this place, this movie, it's like Brigadoon. It's going to pop up and then it's going to cease to exist. So, like, embrace it and enjoy it, which is also why get off your damn phone, right? But, like, embrace it and enjoy it, right? But people get it, man. The people who really get it are like, yeah, because everything is so shallow and everything is so instant for the rest of the world. Everything's, 2-second bits of that and 30-second videos and TikToks and everything. And like when people actually take a deep breath and have an experience, then it just embosses itself on your brain, that experience. It's like going to the movies as a child and having that thing that stays with you forever, whether it's a Disney movie scaring the crap out of you, or going to like the drive-in on vacation, like that is going to stay with me till I'm hopefully an adult old man who doesn't know what day it is, which is pretty much every day. But
I was going to say that's me right now.
Yeah.
Well, you are endlessly inspiring, what you do, what you've done. I certainly know that Mark has plenty of questions for you, but just thank you in general again for bringing us into your world and allowing us to shine on that stage.
Hey, man, right back at you.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we have a long and sordid history going back to when I want to say we probably met after I had graduated from Keene State College Film Program, and you were working at the Putnam Arts Lecture Hall at Keene State College as part of the Film Society there.
That's right. Yeah, I was a projectionist there. Yeah.
I remember going in and hearing you playing one of the Beatle anthology CDs because it had just come out. And it was just glorious as a mutual Beatle fan to walk into a public space and be hearing some rare Beatle outtake. So I think I knew we were on the same track that day.
Nice.
What year was that?
What year did I feel like it was like Anthology 2.
Yeah, it was probably like 95, 96.
Something like
Perfect
that.
timestamp right there.
Yeah, something like that.
And then we learned that we have this mutual love of Burt Reynolds and Elvis, and
right.
You brought that into the programming at the Somerville, so I was thrilled. Some of the best double features I've seen that I didn't have a hand in was going to see Elvis, That's the Way It Is, which is my favorite Elvis anything, and Viva Las Vegas as a 35 double, which was a blast. Going to see the Don Knotts double feature, which I think I remember at the time saying you should call it Double Knots. It was Ghost and Mr. Chicken and Mr. Limpet.
Yeah.
I want to say it was like my memory. I was just telling somebody about this the other day. It was like a 6-movie Chuck Norris marathon. It was a long Chuck Norris marathon.
Yeah, we did like a birthday thing for like a Chuck Norris marathon. That was a lot of fun. I remember that. I still got the poster for that somewhere.
And you had a mega fan come out and give Chuck Norris facts before each film.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You were running
that fan is this guy Joe. He's always going to the movies still, and he's always in fact, he had a great suggestion that I got to do as a series. He said, not all the canon movies were terrible. We should do a series of like the really, really good canon movies. And I was like, that's a brilliant idea. I love suggestions like that,
And if you need a little value added, I'll share a secret. Austin Trunick, who writes the Canon Film Guide books, he lives in Connecticut. He comes out to our shows. He'll sign and sell books. He'll do intros for you. He's amazing.
Awesome.
He literally wrote the book on those.
That's so good.
I was just telling somebody the other day, talking about movie food. So it was my friends Tim and Tom. Tom, who's now a projectionist at the American Cinematheque, amazingly. Yeah. We went to that show, and it was an all-day thing. And were running a food special where it was you could buy a large popcorn and a large soda, and it would refill all day. And that day, I lived on Pepsi and buttered popcorn refills. And that is a culinary and digestive experience I will never repeat. But I feel like I made it out on the other end. more than
I
once.
bet you did.
It's just like somehow I survived that. One of the things I always love about how you program the Somerville, and you told me this years ago, you were talking about running 1,000 clowns, and you said not a lot of people may come to see this, but it's a movie people should see. And I saw that coming up, you've got a film called The Facts of Murder, which is a great Italian detective thriller that almost nobody's heard of. But boy, the people who show up for that are going to have a great time and tell people about what they missed.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's kind of our duty to do that. And I've always say about like when we do a series is I just need the series to make a little money. I don't need every title in the series to make money. Like I did a Jeff Bridges series, right? And yeah, you know what? It's all going to be paid for by Big Lebowski. That's going to pay for the whole, right? Yeah. But I get to show prints of like Thunderfoot and like all these random Jeff Bridges movies from the 70s that maybe I'll get 30, 40 people if I'm lucky. I don't care. I got to run it. I got to watch it too,
We say the same thing, sometimes the bubblegum stuff is what pays for the deep cuts, and the people who show up for the deep cuts, they may be a lot fewer, but they're going to be extremely happy that you did that, and you might be hooking new regular customers for that screening of
how many people buy an album because of the single, right? And then it's those album cuts are the ones that make you a real fan,
Yeah. Right. Another shout out to the time that you ran Smokey and the Bandit and were serving Coors at the bar, and and it was one of my favorite movies, a movie I saw at the drive-in as a kid, and sitting at the Somerville with my friend Rick, and it was something with the AC or the air circulation system. It was Bandit and Frog and that T-top Trans Am rocketing down the highway, and I felt a breeze on me, and it was like I was seeing like 4DX or something like that. It was fabulous.
That's great.
Does the Somerville still have the Museum of Bad Art, or am I just remembering a very long time ago?
We did have it, but it left in 2018. They are I think they are at the Dorchester Brewing Company, which is like obviously a brewery, but they have a bar area. So that's where they moved to. We actually had to repurpose their area for other things when we did some renovations a few years ago. So they're really cool people. They got a great website, but that's where they moved.
That was always a fun thing to do if you got there a little early or you had a break between movies or something like that, was to go down and check out the velvet paintings and things like that. One of the things I love about the Somerville too is that your main theater is untouched. So many single screeners got split up. Like the Coolidge, the balcony became another theater, and other little spaces became theaters. But those additional theaters you have, where I remember seeing, what was it? Delta Force, actually, I saw in little theaters. What are the seat counts in each of your rooms?
No, they've gone down a bit because we've reseated, and actually we've gone down in number because during the pandemic we removed 2 of the cinemas that had been built into that defunct ballroom. We rebuilt the ballroom, so the ballroom is now a multi-use space for mostly music, but also weddings and things like that. So we have 3 screens left, the main house, and then Cinema 2, which is 62 seats, and Cinema 3, which is 109 seats. And those were completely rebuilt in 2018. So stripped to the studs, new everything. So those are a little smaller, but they're nice. Like Cinema 3 I really like the way that came out. It's got a slight stadium pitch to it, and it's got 7.1 sound. It's a good place to see a movie. And we still have 35 in that house as well. We don't use it. But so we kept 30. We have 35 on 2 screens, so the main house and one of the side houses. Because why throw the baby out with the bathwater,
Right, love it.
Keep your options open, totally. And what's the seat count in the main theater?
The main theater is now 828 because we did some. We kind of made some of the rows bigger there too. So it was 900 when I first started working here, but it's down to 828 now. But there's actually, and it's the bigger balcony than the downstairs. The downstairs is like 363, so the balance is up in the balcony because it's just one of those deep balconies.
That balcony is fabulous. I love it. And how far back the seats go too. It's like we walked up to the to bring the one of the features up to David at the last road show, and you're almost touching the ceiling when you get up to that projection booth.
Oh yeah, I call it the Matterhorn, man. You lug a 70mm print up those stairs, you feel it the next day. I can tell you that.
And you do not want to lose your balance. You don't want to lose far back.
You don't. And we used to. It's funny that the back row of the balcony is row double P. That's how they're lettered, double letters up there. And it used to be double Q. We removed a row to make them more spacious, right? But we used to do this thing when you were working in the box office. If someone came in to buy concert tickets and they were just being a complete jackhole, you'd make sure that they were welcome to the double Q ranch. We used to call it. Sorry, the only seat for that show is double Q.
And we will rent you some binoculars too.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So just a couple random questions I have here. What would you say, thinking back, because I first started going to the movies in Boston when I was in college with the aforementioned friends. So that would have been mid-ish 90s, driving down to see movies at the Somerville and the Brattle and the Coolidge, and really falling in love with the Boston old theater repertory, independent cinema scene. What would you say, how would you sort of, thinking back to when you were a youth and now, how has that changed? What's the current state? It seems to me very healthy because you do, as you said, you've got Harvard Film Archive, Somerville, Brattle, Coolidge showing all kinds of indie and repertory and doing film festivals and stuff. How would you look at that landscape for cinema and theaters then versus now?
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely more healthy than it was. I think, obviously all of those places existed back then. When I was a kid, there wasn't a ton at the Somerville that I would see necessarily because I was a kid, right? And I wanted to see like Ghostbusters and stuff like that.
Stuff, yeah.
And they were showing like, the French New Wave movies and stuff like that. So like the stuff that I saw as a kid, was like animation festivals and Three Stooges festivals and things like that. But like, the Coolidge and the Brattle are just they're very evergreen in terms of my lifetime. And I've always said, like, look, I loved going to college. I made a lot of good friends. I learned a lot of good stuff, but I could have just gone to the Brattle every day for 4 years and probably got a better film education, because it's like they call themselves Boston's film school, and it's real, it's true. So I think it's healthier now though, because I mean, everything can always go away, right? The pandemic showed us that, but I think everything was very tentative in the 80s. I mean, the Coolidge had to be saved. They literally stood around it and saved it from being taken. And now they're a very strong nonprofit. The Brattle, too, became a nonprofit, and they don't own where they are, but they seem to be on good footing. And, we're hanging on there. Harvard Film Archive, God bless them. They're constant. Of course, they got Harvard in their pocket, so that helps, right? So I think the scene now for rep cinema in Boston is better and on more sure footing than it was when I was a kid, for sure.
Beautiful.
So let's get into the Mahoning Drive-In Road Show.
Yeah.
We talked about, I threw a bunch of titles at you and we went back and forth on some things. And as always, you initially have some ideas and then maybe the rights are too expensive or the prints aren't available or whatever. But I am over the moon thrilled that we are kicking it off with Shockwaves from 1977. Because that is a movie, as a kid in New Hampshire who loved Channel 38 and Channel 56 for movies. That was my early film education growing up, the Boston independent TV stations.
Yes.
And it kills me that I don't remember now. If you asked me a few years ago, I would have. I don't remember now which of those two stations I saw Shockwaves on, but it was on like a Saturday afternoon. I feel like it was 38. 38 used to 56 would do a Creature double feature, and then 38 would like wait until that was over, and then they would always run a horror movie, so you sort of got that triple every Saturday.
I agree. That was kind of my gut instinct on that one too, because I was a solid fan of the Creature double feature growing up. If it was raining out, building Legos and watching the Creature double feature was where it was at when I was like 8.
It's why I love Godzilla movies and Hammer movies and stuff like that. So the idea that I can be instrumental in bringing such a favorite of Saturday afternoon TV in Boston from back then to Saturday night big screen is a thrill to me. I did see Shockwaves years ago. The Coolidge ran it as a midnight show, and it was right after Steve Irwin died, and they were doing a costume contest, and a guy dressed as zombie Steve Irwin with like a stinger. It was like a stinger or like it was like a ray or something.
Oh my God.
It was one of those sticking out of his chest. And when he was on stage with Clinton at the time, he said, "Who are you, zombie Steve Irwin?" And somebody in the crowd yelled, "Too soon." And then partway into Shockwaves, this guy makes a sarcastic crack about the Titanic, and somebody yelled out, "Too soon," which killed me.
That is the beauty. That's what I'm talking about. You're not going to get that at home, man. Like
Community theater, baby.
No.
That's it. I mean, I love stuff like that, right? I got two stories that are definitely in that row. One is even just something as simple. Opening night of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's like 700 people in the theater, and Brad Pitt stands up on the roof to change the antenna and takes off his shirt. And someone in the back row just went, "Damn," right? And I mean, the whole audience burst out laughing. That's a first-rate movie, but that's that sense of community you get sometimes, right? And I'll never forget when I went to see Good Will Hunting, right, they filmed that right outside at Harvard Square when I worked there, and they had the premiere there, but I didn't get to see it till it was like a month into its run. I went to the Cherie Theater downtown to watch that. And every time they showed MIT on screen, they like people would hoot and holler, hoot and holler, hoot and holler. Finally, they showed it, and I just yelled, "Get over yourselves!" Right? And I mean, the whole audience cracked up. That's like, I love that stuff. You're not going to get that at home, you know. Anyway, I digress.
No. So we kick off with Shockwaves, and then we run Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse, which is super fun. And of the Tobe Hooper filmography, the like of his really good movies, the one that doesn't get talked about that much. And we were going to stop it at that, but you insisted that we do a midnight show of Alligator, which is another fabulous movie about the old urban legend about kids, getting a pet baby alligator that's tiny in Florida, and then after it starts to grow too big, they just flush it down the toilet. And in this case, it munches on like pharmaceutical waste or something and grows into this giant thing that only Robert Forster can kill. Henry Silva can try, but only Robert Forster can kill. So we're doing our roadshow thing with the vintage trailers and Virgil and I introducing the films and intermission reels and all that, which is just going to be a thrill. We're going to be selling tour T-shirts and all that. And for anybody traveling in, the Somerville is located like you couldn't get much closer to a T-stop than the Somerville is. Like it's ridiculously convenient for public transportation.
Yeah, when you're in the basement, you definitely hear the trains. When
really?
When you're in the dressing rooms of the main theater, they're downstairs. You can hear the train go by for sure.
Rumble Rama.
That's right. Earthquake in Sense-Around, man. As people used to say, because there used to be freight tracks that ran right next to it where the subway is now, up until the 80s, and people remember seeing Earthquake there, saying, "Geez, when the train went by, I thought it actually was an earthquake." So it was a mono house, but when the train went by, it was in Sense-Around.
Suddenly it's surround sound. That's fantastic. Speaking of, going a little out of sequence here. Speaking of your role at the Somerville, there is some relatively fresh news that has broken, if you would like to delve into that.
Yes, that is true. Literally, I guess just broke this week, but myself and two other employees and another partner have signed a lease to take over the operation of the Somerville Theater and its sister theater, the Capitol in Arlington. And it's very exciting. So I will now be the owner-operator of the theater.
Bravo!
Yeah, man. It's 50% excitement, 50% terror, but It was, the owners have been great. They've put so much money into the place, and they were kind of looking to pass the baton. And, I was really concerned because the only people who would really be interested in it are giant concert promoters who they would just gut the film programs. And, and like, I love concerts. They're a huge part of what we do, but film after 111 years, I don't want to see that go away. And I don't want to see the theater not be what it is to the community. I live in this community. And so we took the chance, and we're going to be running it ourselves. It'll change hands at some point between February and March. I'm not sure. We're all waiting on like local licensing stuff to go through. But yeah, absolutely. Big changes for me. But honestly, our goal is to keep it doing exactly what it's doing. So hopefully for customers, it will be just more of the good stuff we already do.
It's comfort knowing it's in the right hands,
Yeah, you guys too, right? You had that issue last year, right?
Yeah, we're incredibly lucky with how things shook out for us. And it really does go back to, the security of the business. We always say this, even if we slip, the audience will not let us fall. Like we have that much of a love for what we do. And we saw that in waves last year with the loss of Jeff and the reestablishing of the business and being able to do that in record time. And yeah, it's just, I think people can always look to our story when they question this power of cinema or this power of community. It's truly inspiring over and over again, as is your story,
Oh, right. It happens all over the country, man. People have gotten together in so many different places to save the local movie house or whatever it is. Right. That's so important. And it communities where it hasn't happened, where sadly like things get torn down or not opened, people feel the loss, and so it's really, I'm not religious, but we're doing the Lord's work, boys. We're doing the Lord's work.
Amen, my friend.
God love you.
Well, why don't you let our audience know where they can go to support the Somerville, whether it's socials or website, any of that stuff.
Sure, it's somervilletheater.com, and it's theater spelled the old-fashioned way, TRE. But if you Google us, you'll probably find us. And we have a membership program, so if you live locally, you can do that. But also, just buy tickets to things like the Mahoning Road Show, and we'll all be happy at the end.
That's right. Well, we can't wait to come into town. We can't wait to see you again. And again, let your team know how much we appreciate all that they do for the film community. And we can't wait to rock with you guys.
Hell yeah.
All right. And on that note, Jeff, take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field. And most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night and God bless you.